Throughout history, we've told tales of mysterious and unexplained mysteries, such as haunted houses, experiences with unknown creatures, and people who mysteriously vanish in full view of witnesses, to name but a few. Many people dismiss these scary stories as nothing but a fanciful way of scaring friends and family members, or as a plea for attention. But the people who lived through these chilling events insist that they really did happen, regardless of how inexplicable they may seem. Number 5. A hair-raising mystery befell one family in Massachusetts in 1963 when they started experiencing strange events in their house, and to this day there's been no explanation. In October of that year, the Francis Martin family noticed that a damp patch was forming on a wall in their TV room. They found this strange as they'd never had similar plumbing issues before, and the weather wasn't cold enough to damage the pipes. A few moments after noticing the damp patch, they heard a strange popping sound, followed by a stream of water that came shooting out of the wall. They assumed that a pipe had burst inside the wall, but over the next few days they heard more popping sounds, followed by water gushing from different walls in the house. The spouts would occur roughly every 15 minutes, lasting for about 20 minutes before disappearing, and soon the house was too flooded to live in. They decided to temporarily move in with Mr. Martin's mother-in-law in Lawrence, a short distance away, but their troubles were far from over. Shortly after arriving at the house in Lawrence, 5 rooms in the building were drenched with water after it came pouring out of the walls. The area's deputy fire chief was summoned to check for leaking pipes, but he found that there weren't any, and he was left baffled. One deputy reported that he was present at the house when he heard the mysterious popping sound and saw a jet of water spray into the room. The family decided to return to Massachusetts and, upon arrival, turned off the water supply to the house at the main shutoff. The pipes were drained to ensure that there was no water present, but still the gushing continued, forcing them to return to Lawrence, only for the same thing to happen there once again. The water spouts gradually stopped over time, but no explanation was ever found for the strange phenomenon, and it remains an unexplained mystery. Number 4. The unsolved disappearance of Carl Hunrath and Wilbur Wilkinson started on the 10th of November 1963, when Hunrath contacted a few of his friends to tell them that he was going on a trip. The two men paid for a 1-hour rental of a small plane from Gardena Airport in Los Angeles and took off. Hunrath piloted the plane despite only having very little experience and failing to submit a flight path. Hunrath's friends later stated that he believed a spacecraft had landed nearby, and that if he and Wilkinson could find it, they would be taken to another planet by extraterrestrials with whom he'd been communicating by radio. Neither the men nor the plane were ever seen again, and it was thought that they had simply gotten lost and crashed, until further details about their plans came to light. Wilkinson's wife later reported that the two men believed that the end of the world would be near, as Earth was set to be invaded by a race of extraterrestrials known as the Mycerians. Hunrath had become interested in UFOs after he claimed to have met an extraterrestrial being, and he moved to Los Angeles after having an argument with a cult leader named George Adamski. UFO researcher George Williamson, who believed that the Mycerians were actually a peaceful race that lived on the moon, stated that he didn't believe extraterrestrials to be involved with the disappearances. Many people believe that the two friends were successful in their adventure, and that they've been taken to live in another world, possibly on Venus or Mars. Others rumored that the two men had merely decided to fly to Mexico, but this story was proven impossible as they only had enough fuel to fly for 3 hours, less than is needed to make it there. Others believe that due to Hunrath's inexperience and their unfamiliarity with the area, they ran into trouble with the downdraft at the nearby Big Mountain Range, and they simply crashed and perished. But since no sign of either man has ever been found, and even more inexplicably, the plane also remains undiscovered, it's still an unsolved mystery that still has no explanation. Number 3. In 2018, 51-year-old building surveyor Gregor Stewart from Fife in Scotland decided to buy a creepy ventriloquist doll, but it would turn out to be a decision that he lived to regret as it became a real-life scary mystery. Upon purchasing the doll, Gregor found it strange that the seller, a man from California, insisted that it be bought by someone who lives as far away from him as possible. However, the man gave no explanation and Gregor thought nothing more of it. That is, until he took ownership of the mysterious doll, who he has named Uncle Herb. He states that he's seen the doll's mouth open and close of its own accord, despite the mouth's mechanism no longer being in working order. When he first received the doll, he placed it in a case on its own and gave it some time to settle, and this is when he first noticed the mouth inexplicably opening. When he finally decided to remove it from the case, the mouth had closed again. Gregor believes that Uncle Herb opens his mouth when he's unhappy about something and only closes it again once he is placated. He decided to try and communicate with the doll via a spirit box, which, according to some paranormal researchers, allows spirits to communicate through the manipulation of white noise. When he asked the doll for its name, the spirit of a man named Herbert replied that he had attached himself to the doll. Herbert went on to explain that he was feeling frustrated at never being given a name, and having spent several years locked in the cupboard of a previous owner, an elderly woman. He added that he'd spent some time in prison, and therefore Gregor believes that the doll becomes angry when confined to a case. He later learned that the previous owner often heard strange noises coming from the cupboard where he was kept. When she passed away, her family decided to get rid of the doll as they thought it was creepy. Hence, they gave it to the seller from California. But he decided to sell it when he started hearing strange footsteps in his house. He eventually moved it into his garage, but the noises continued until he was finally able to sell it. Gregor now keeps the doll on a shelf rather than inside the case. Number 2. A strange mystery that was discovered on Google Earth in 2015 was made all the more mysterious when additional images of the area revealed there to be more than initially thought. Russian UFO hunter Valentin Degtyarev found an image taken on the 15th of February 2012 by Google Earth of an area in the Antarctic showing a crack-shaped opening in the ice and snow. He believed it to be proof of an extraterrestrial ship that had crash-landed into the area. When the opening was measured, he estimated the craft to be around 240 feet in diameter and about 40 feet high. But when other researchers decided to take a look at the images taken of the exact same area in April and December of the previous year, they stumbled on an image that still has no explanation. In the earlier image, 4 huge vehicles thought to be tanks can be seen parked in the snow, all pointing at the strange opening. This image also shows what Degtyarev believes to be the actual UFO, with a trail in the snow behind it, as if it had landed or crashed and slid to a stop. But not everyone is convinced. Many commenters believe that what was found is merely an indent or a hole in the ice, and they speculate that the vehicles may not be tanks, as they would have to be at least 70 feet in length if so. They've also argued that the image shows no tracks that would have been made by the vehicles, though others have stated that the tracks could merely have been covered up again by falling snow, or been blown away by the wind. But many others believe that the vehicles traveled to the area to retrieve the strange craft, and that it's been taken to an undisclosed location since they are no longer visible in the images taken the following year. The question remains that if it was in fact removed, who was it removed by and why was it done in such secrecy? It's also been speculated that this isn't an isolated incident, as the area would provide a perfect landing zone for extraterrestrial craft, away from the prying eyes of members of the public. No further evidence has been found, and it remains a strange, unexplained mystery. Number 1. A scary mystery unfolded in Missouri in 1978 when the members of a family living in the area were found to be suffering from a strange sickness that still has no explanation today. Robert and Bonnie Boyer lived in a modest home with their 2 children, Barry and Tanya. On the 19th of September, Bonnie's parents tried to contact them by phone, as their house was set to be fumigated and they wanted to stay with the family until it was completed. But every time they called, they would get a busy signal, and after trying to get a hold of Bonnie several times, her mother Ava decided to go over to their house to see what was going on. When she arrived at the house, she was shocked to find that Robert, who had answered the door, seemed dazed and confused, unable to answer the simplest of questions. When he eventually recognized her, he invited her in but was unable to tell her where Bonnie and the children were. Ava thought that he might be intoxicated, but this was highly unlikely as he was not known to drink. She noticed that the house was in a state of disarray, and when she entered the couple's bedroom, she found Bonnie on the floor at the foot of the bed, deceased. The children were found in their rooms in a trance-like state but alive. Bonnie demanded that Robert tell her what happened, but he merely shook his head and started weeping. Police were called and the children were taken to a hospital, but Robert was still babbling incoherently, and they noticed that there was a strange smell in the house which caused them to become dizzy and nauseous. They immediately suspected that there had been a gas leak, but there were no gas appliances in the house and no trace of gas or toxins were found to be present in the home. Tests were done to identify carbon monoxide, arsenic, hydrogen sulfide, methane, and cyanide, but none of these were detected. Tests done on Robert and his children also showed that they had no toxins in their system. They didn't have food poisoning, no bacterial agents were found, and they were free of alcohol and medication. The same result was found when Bonnie's remains were tested, and no explanation was ever found. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.